Parametric equations, day 2. Today we're just going to follow up with some problems, just more practice. So the first example, A, we're given these two equations here, and x equals 1 minus 2t and y equals 2 minus t, and our parameter is from negative infinity to infinity. Well, the instructions just simply say eliminate the parameter. The parameter is the t. We want to get rid of t. So the way to do it is you would, for any problem really, is you'd look for which variable is shared. In this case, it's t. And then you decide which equation do I think it's easier to solve for. And so on this one, I'll say it's easier to get t by itself in this equation, so I'll use this one. You could use this one just as easy. I'll probably do it both ways. But first, to get t by itself, I would need to subtract 2 from both sides. So now I know that y minus 2 equals negative t. Now, that got rid of that. Now, if I want to make this positive t, I need to multiply both sides by negative 1. If I multiply both sides of the equation by negative 1, I can find out that now t is positive, and so I'll put t on this side. T is positive, and this becomes negative y plus 2, or you could say 2 minus y. You can write it either way, so if it confuses you, I can just write it as negative y plus 2 as well. There's my t. Now, what do I do with that? I plug it into the other equation. So I would say that x equals 1 minus 2, and instead of t, we're going to replace it with this, negative y plus 2. Now, to get my next step, I need to distribute this through. So I'll have x equals 1, and then negative 2 times negative y is positive 2y. And then I'll have negative 2 times positive 2, which is negative 4. So there's my equation. When I simplify this all down, I would have that x equals the 1 and the negative 4 combined together, so I'd have 2y, and then 1 minus 4 is negative 3. So I could write the equation this way, but rarely do we write our equation as x equals. Normally, we would write it as y equals. So I'm going to now rearrange this and solve for y. So what do we need to do first? We'd add the 3 over, so we'd have x plus 3 equals 2y. And finally, last step, divided by 2. And so we now know that y equals, you could write it like this, or you could write it as x over 2 plus 3 over 2. You could leave it like that or write in this form. That would be my equation. So those are in rectangular form. Rectangular is when it's just x and y. We've eliminated the parameter. These two answers are essentially the same. It's just this one solved for x equals, this one solved for y equals. And now we could test our graphs. So what we do, and by the way, we could have solved this for t first and plugged into this equation, but I just decided I'm not going to do it that way. You can do it if you would like. Now let's check our answer. So we're going to first graph these two. So I want to go to my calculator and choose add a graph. And once you add a graph, to type in the parametric, you go to menu, graph entry, choose parametric, and we type in our equations. The first was 1 minus 2t, 1 minus 2t, and then the other equation was y equals 2 minus t. 2 minus t. If you remember, our t values were from negative infinity to positive infinity. Now the calculator won't take that, so I'll just type in negative 10 to positive 10. That usually is enough. So we'll just say negative 10 to positive 10. I'll press enter, and there it is. We're looking for, this graph represents a straight line. Now that other equation I got, you can type in either one in. This you can type in the function, you go menu, graph entry, and choose function to type it in as y equals. And this, if it's x equals, you can go to menu, graph entry, and you could type in equation and choose a line, and you could type it in. There's a y equals form. This is a x equals, just a vertical line, and then you could have a standard example like this, but I'll just choose this one. And we discovered that this was x over 2, so that's basically 1/2 x. Let me change it this way. So you can see this is 1/2 x, and then because that's the same thing as just having a 1 here. So it's 1/2 x plus 3/2. Press enter. Notice it's the same exact line. Finally, one other way we could have done it is you could have gone menu, actions, text, And from here, you could type in x equals, and our equation was 2y minus 3. 2y minus 3. When I hit enter, nothing happens right away until you drag it to the x-axis. Once you do, there's the graph. Again, it's the exact same line. So we did do it correctly. All three of those match. All right, part B. This time I've given the equations this way. So we need to eliminate the parameter. Again, what we need to do is solve for t. So you choose whichever equation you think is going to be easier. I'm going to say the top is. So I'll say x equals 3t plus 1. And I'm going to solve for t. So I subtract 1 from each side. And I have x minus 1 equals 3t. Next step is I'm going to divide by 3. Now I know that this is t. So t equals x minus 1 all over 3. Once I have what t equals, I plug it into the other equation. So my other equation was with y, so it's y equals 4 minus the square root, and instead of t, I substitute in x minus 1 all over 3. Now I don't think I can simplify that, so this right here would be my equation. Let's check our work here. So I want to go to my calculator to clear this. I'm just going to go home screen, new document, and I'm going to say add a graph. And the first equation is 3t plus 1. Oops. So you go menu, graph entry, parametric, 3t minus 1. And my second equation was 4 minus square root of t. And it actually is plus 1 here. Change that first. It's a plus. Now it was 4 minus square root t. And before I move on, to make sure that it was 4 minus. Yes, it is. And then we go from -2 to 5. So come in here, and it's -2 there. And this symbol is actually different. So if we want to change it, it was like actually just less than. Not that it'll make a big difference, but to be exact, and this value was 5. There's what the graph should look like. And now our answer we had was that y equals 4 minus square root of x minus 1 over 3. Again, you can write this as a function because y is like f of x. So if I go menu, graph entry function, it'll take me back. And so I'd say y equals, it was 4 minus square root. Here was that fraction, x minus 1, I believe. X minus 1 all over 3. Hit enter. Notice it's exactly the same graph. So when we did, in fact, do it correctly.